I'd like to call in Anusha to please present her presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm basically an architect with a master's degree in architectural lighting design. And I used to work for a Los Angeles based architectural lighting design firm for 9 years. And now I'm back in India for good. Like for the last 5 years, I have my own practice, I have my own studio in Bangalore. Uh, and, you know, I'm a part of an organization called IALD, which is a US-based organization. We are, the practicing lighting designers who are of higher qualification, caliber, who has done, good projects, are a part of it, and I'm a professional member. Lighting design, I just want to talk a very quick roundup about the profession. Lighting design is a process, like how architectural design is a process, and most of us are architects by basic qualification, so we do understand how basic thought process works in a project from an architect, and we get a brief from the architect, and we ensure that the integrity of the project and the main central idea of the project is getting translated in light. That there is only one vision in a project, and I strongly believe that as an architect, and that primary architect's vision is something I carry forward, enhance, detail, and make sure that concept is getting executed. And so lighting design has its own methodology. Light is a great tool. Yatin sir had a great talk, and I think I resonated with most of the things he said. Lighting design is just not about lux levels. And I get very angry when like somebody says, okay, you can you do a layout? And I'm like, no, I don't work on layouts. Layout is one of it. I mean, it's a result of a process, and we do design with a certain methodology in mind, certain things in mind. So there is like quality of light, there is quantity of light, there are several kinds of light that play: direct, indirect, wall washing, accenting. There's so many techniques that we try and play cleverly with light. The whole idea is lighting is one of the elements. It gets crafted in a built space. Like Yatin sir said, space is what is important. Lighting is one of the elements that needs to be interwoven, just entwined in very quietly into a built space. You shouldn't say somebody has come in and put in lighting there. Somebody should say, hey, the spatial design looks great. I mean that's the harmony that needs to sort of work hand in hand. And me being an architect, I specialize in detailing, and that's the essence of my work. And how do you take that one thought, one composition, make like a composition, take that essence and ensure it sort of gets delivered in the end? That's user friendly, that's maintainable. Like there are all the other factors that do crop in as well. So most of my projects I've done are hospitality. Currently I'm doing other projects as well, but I'm trying to put out hospitality projects here. And like I think the other people have also mentioned, if we cleverly use light, you don't need to puncture every bit of the ceiling. You really don't need to. And there are projects where I have never punctured a ceiling and ended up doing a successful project, ended up getting cleverly light where I wanted the light. So now, the first part of my presentation is going to focus on how do you compose light? How do you conceptualize light in a hospitality space? It will apply to any other space as well. Then the second part goes detailing. So one part is about visual composition. Whenever we talk about hospitality space, you're trying to sort of have guests come in, like you take them through a experience. So every frame is an experience for an end user. It's a visual experience, it's a visual composition. One, we do need light as one and a part of a visual composition to enable us see forms as it is designed. That is one. Two is lighting for safety as well. Lighting to ensure your tasks are taken care of. So this part is about visual composition. This is a restaurant in Trivandrum, very successfully completed project in 2012. This is called Villa Maya. And if you see this is the entry driveway, and then you have on the end that you see is the entry pavilion here. And you see a view where you see the textures of the driveway being lit up. Because of that steep angle, you see the shadow patterns that get formed, and that streak, sort of visually sort of takes you through a pattern, a texture, and then you see the end part, that is the pavilion. And if you see the pitch of the roof timber structure is also very softly detailed in. Every texture is being lit up, and in its own blend and hierarchy. And if you see, there are bamboo planters, but they're softly lit from the back side. So it sort of ends out in silhouette. So each one is very crafted compositions that lead you through an experience, basically. And there is a certain grammar to lighting design, meaning, like, what do you highlight, what gets composed, and what comes forward, what goes backward. And this all, I think, is a central idea that I take from an architect's concept or an interior designer's concept. And when he talks about, so a lot of projects I'm insisting on getting on board during concept phase. The reason is I will be able to tell him what are the needs. Okay, I can also, like, sometimes enhance and say, this detailing would work really great here. So that would be primary thing. Now this the left hand side one is Villa Maya, where this is like a dining pavilion. If you see, there's only one pin spot that's on the table, so it just quietly lights where it needs to light. And at the backdrop, you have a niche here that just kind of gets highlighted in its own, and softly the columns are lit. And then if you see this little timber panel getting detailed very softly, and at the background, the stone gets also highlighted from inside the water. So if you see, there is a background, there is a foreground, there are these intensities and variations played. There are, like, spots, and then there are these washers that sort of play. So these are different kinds of things. And light and space, they'll have to be in sort of some kind of a visual harmony for each other to work. And on the right hand side, this is Ritz-Carlton Bangalore. And if you see, this is a outdoor dining pavilion in one of the specialty restaurants. That's like a restaurant cum bar. And if you see, it's, the lighting is very softly done from within the water feature, so that these textures are lit up. So this green wall, the screen wall is being lit up. The water feature gets lit up, but there is not, like, directly light where it would hit an end user. It's just there. It sort of engulfs in the ambient environment. So basically, lighting should be in such a way that you should never be able to take apart lighting and build form from one another. It should be so carefully done. And the third part is understanding spatial elements. How do you dissect them and understand them? For example, this is Park Hyatt in Chennai. The entire project I had completed in somewhere around 2012 when it opened. And this is the specialty restaurant where, if you see, this is a glazed facade, and it sort of is in a forefront of a lily pond. And then because it's a glazed facade, you should understand the other part of it is lighting and material play. Like, for example, any glazed building taking lighting, you light it directly, it would just only highlight the defects on clear glass. Whereas on a clear glass facade, whatever is on the backdrop forms a part of your greater visual composition. For example, in this specialty restaurant, wherever there are the background shelves, whatever is the background texture, the seating group in the background, those form your backdrop. So how does lighting play from the backdrop silently forms a part of it. If you see, the curtain is being softly graced from the top. And if you see, the lily pond and the sculpture on the left hand side is being lit up softly. So that sort of a composition gets really understood. And lighting and how each material reacts to light is very, very important. And basically, we are trying to sort of gather a unique experience for a hospitality end user. and layering of spatial elements. This is inside the Lantern restaurant in Ritz-Carlton Bangalore. And if you see here, the ceiling forms one element. The wall grazing, that slot forms the second element. There are these columns here, and there are the seating group there. If you see, predominantly, it's a nice contrast play, very clever contrast play, where the saturated light sorry, is being used on the ceiling, where there are those acrylic tubes, and it's a very traditional cove and acrylic tubes. And the care was ensured that the saturated light never reaches the user, because if you put blue light on an end user, they're going to end up feeling terrible in 5 minutes. But whereas you can use it as an accentuating on a building element where it does not bleed onto an end user very cleverly. And on the left is glass blocks, like say for example, this soft warm light on a slot on the glass blocks sort of create the contrast backdrop layer there. And the rest just follows its course. It's a bar, and I can afford that level of a contrast and that level of a color play here, because context is also very important when you sort of talk about color play. So like I said, so the first part of it is composition. So now once I conceive what I want to achieve, then I'll have to struggle out how I can quietly detail it and ensure that my concept board, so I'm going to show just two of my projects, where I show the concept board and the end product for understanding how it works. How do you frame views? On the left is Park Kolkata Zen restaurant. On the right side is Villa Maya restaurant in Trivandrum. So on the left, it's like, these slats are kind of in a sine wave pattern. And the uplight in between each of the slat sort of captures that turn in the slat here, sort of softly sort of grazes it. And on the right hand side, if you see how a step gets lit up in a very different way, this sort of a contrast, where you just need the step to be seen, can only be afforded in a restaurant, where you kind of create that drama, that light play, ensure that the viewer sees the whole place in a very different angle. And the arches on the background being subtly lit. There is downlighting, but you don't kind of see it at all. Very, very small spots. That was like the onset of, it was completed in 2012, the first probably all LED project where we got like smallest fixtures and so on. This again is Villa Maya. Now, highlights and pause. I think there was also somebody who mentioned yesterday, like it's not about what you light, it's about what you don't light as well that forms a part of the composition. The light loses its importance if you just keep throwing a bucket of light at everything. So it's about how you compose and how you withhold certain things that sort of outshines the whole thing. So on the right hand side, if you see, just the lanterns are there. The designer wanted to hang some lanterns on a tree, and that's all outshines, and on the background the arches are very subtly lit. And on the left hand side, only the trees are lit. If you see, the niches are lit, and the lanterns are on a dining deck. And such very soft, everything is so contextual that you understand and play it where it is absolutely necessary. And understanding detailing here. On the left, the shelves are lit. Some parts of it are, the top one is Ritz-Carlton, the bottom one is Park Hyatt Chennai, where the shelf itself becomes a lighting element, a lighting composition, where you understand, it becomes a lantern by itself. And how do you detail a shelf? Where does the light come from? And it should come from a uniform, it should have a uniform throw. What happens inside the cove? The inside of the cove gets leveled, and what is the throw on the cove light, understanding that, and how much of a gap you need, and there needs to be drivers that goes inside, and mainly doing it through mock-ups, understanding after a first idea and a sketch. Then when it comes to site, mock-up is something where you can impeccably realize projects. And on the left is a mock-up image, and on the right, if you see, it's a final product of how I ensure that, when the backdrop gets graced, what is the element in the backdrop? What is the paint finish there? Is that a marble? Will it be glossy? Will it show the dots on the LED? Those are very, very important things to understand how you finally detail it. Yes, we have thought of, now, this is a project, this is a bar called Marquee in Radisson Blue in Bangalore, and on the left is a concept image. So on both the left images are concept images, and this is a recently completed project. So the whole idea was these lots of streaks, streaks of light was the whole idea, and how, these light streaks formed a part of the major composition. There was not any downlighting in this project. Actually, so how each of these cove sort of gets detailed and it goes to the back bar, and how the bar counter, the quartz bar counter forms the forefront, and how uniformly it gets lit from the background, because the quartz, how it is without being lit and how it is being lit is two very different images. And that sort of, you see that's like so bright, it can actually pretty much light in a bar sort of a scenario. You don't need any more lighting. And if you see, so there are 2-3 settings we had planned for. One was a bar setting, one was a lounge setting, and the third was a nightclub setting. So this has to transform completely when it is a nightclub. So, and on the right side you see a DJ wall. So the streaks idea also form on a DJ wall, where we had to plan those perforations, where the lighting goes and how do you access the light after you sort of mount everything. So and the added advantage was that the designer later changed the floor to a glossy floor. If you see, not just the light, but the reflection of the light forms a part of the overall composition. And those streaks sort of gets formed on the floor as well, intentionally, unintentionally. And this is the drink rail here. On the right side, I'm just showing, what kind of sections I work through, like to understand, how light gets wedged in there. And because it's a glossy floor, you should not see those LED dots. So in that case, how do you make sure that the lighting specification is, and how each of these are laid out, and where does all these things go? How is a control system for the thing? All of these things, yes, do form a part of the puzzle, but the first idea sort of stays intact until the last. And detailing is the key. If you see here, so this is the nightclub setting. So the whole place really transforms. So on one side is the color changing LED cove. So it's a double cove slot actually, and one side was warm white. The reason I kept the warm white is because their F&B is their second preference. Sometimes they rent the space out for conferences. On the right hand side, if you see this seating area is actually like can be a spillover for a conference, and that was the brief from the owner. So if you see, there are these ridges in between those streaks right on the top. So I had actually cleverly placed certain downlights that were only 3-inch aperture size, and that had a chrome reflector. The chrome, or it's very quiet when you turn it off. It kind of can look like a sprinkler basically when it's turned off. So it goes unnoticed in between the AC grill when it's turned off. So on a bar setting or a nightclub setting, nobody even sees that. But there is an option to turn more lights on at, like, say, roughly around 300-350 lux, but lux is only a guiding number. I use it only as like one of the things. But like, for example, if you tackle better uniformity, zero glare, you can actually have good meeting light levels at lower light levels, meaning technically not that number basically. So where it is comfortable enough to read. And the other thing is, these days LED pack too much of light. Just only the coves on at 100% gives you like more like 150 to 175 lux, which is way too much actually. It's you end up dimming these guys down to like 15% at bar setting. So imagine how much of light goes unused. So you can actually technically use way less fixtures. So you make less interventions in a parent body, parent shell. So, and keep thinking all about these things. So this is a dining deck where you have those, it's not very visible, but you see these streaks here. Those are in-ground fixtures that just give a streak line of light. And the uplights that are on the planter, thick planter, that's the only source of light. But you see that in a dining deck, that's all you need. That's the quality of light that's required for the space. You need that soft indirect light that engulfs around. You don't want to disturb the privacy as well. So just the right amount of light that's required. This is more a hospitality space designed inside a big software company, but it's still a hospitality space where they call their venture capitalists, they entertain them, they pitch for ideas, they have a discussion, sometimes they have cocktail party events for them. So it's a kind of a semi-hospitality zone. On the left bottom is the concept image. So this was worked on a concept level SketchUp model. I start with even hand-drawn sketches to understand, take it out. Where will lighting be an asset here? How can I detail in the light? On the right-hand side is finished product and on top is a finished product. Now, on the right-hand side, if you see the fin wall, right? So the fin wall becomes a vertical illuminance element. If you see here, there are no downlights around. You cannot just even read that there are downlights around, because from vertical illuminance, you can get a reflected light of easily 120 to 150 lux easily on 100%. Remember, 100% at a non-dimmed level. So imagine, so that becomes an integrating element between the discussion zone and the video conferencing zone. This is more like a lounge. It can be used for a cocktail party. On the other side is a video conferencing zone. Now, all of these coves put in together and the vertical illuminance element has brought down the need for the downlights so drastically that on a 3,000 square foot space, I end up only using 10 downlights very cleverly only over the discussion table, maybe over the VC table, and that was pretty much it. There was no other need for any lighting. And so what goes behind these fins? What finishes are these fins? So that to that level, I sit and coordinate what kind of a paint goes on it. And we do very thorough mock-ups actually. So on the right side is the mock-up of the fin. If you can see the section of the fin. And how do you access the fixture? What kind of a fixture is that? If that is a linear grazer, where does it go wedged on the top? How I don't see the fixture at all from anywhere. And on the left top is again a SketchUp view, initial concept view, just for you to understand that, what pains we go through to detail something, from a concept. So on the right bottom is the same image, but it's a finished product. So if you see, there is very soft indirect lighting that happens behind these hexagons, and you cannot spot it, but there are some cleverly placed downlights here in between those hexagons on a black finish with a chrome reflector and so on. So when it gets turned on, nobody sees it, but you get the end light output that you want, and that's what is important. So and 3 is glare point. So, and even if you see here over the VC table, there are downlights, but you cannot see them. They are just 3-inch aperture, very, very small downlights. So understanding that, overall project vision or a project concept or an interior concept sort of overtakes all of these things, and we keep so many things in mind, methodically work concept. So it's very similar to developing an architectural concept. I'm also talking from the perspective of me being an architect as well. So that's very, very important. And I wanted to just do a very small question and answer session with one of the vendors I worked on both the last 2 projects. The main idea is and also the same value from me working from international projects. I'm trying to translate the same thing here on Indian projects. And I want the same value set brought in here. So how does a vendor technically handle design integrity? Because he is also a main this thing, you kind of give a drawing, you kind of give a vision. He is also a part of the team, and ensuring that the other consultants would have already understood it, but he will be a part of the thing who guides the electrical contractor basically. So that becomes a very good tying point, and I wanted him to just quickly answer how you try to preserve design integrity.
Yeah, I'm Jitin Jainath. I'm also an IALD affiliate member. So we basically understand the design, we read drawings, and we make sure, at site there is provisions given before the order is taken. And we try not to dilute the project, the specs. We try as much as possible to keep the the main products specified. And if there is a budget constraint, we try to give alternatives, again getting approvals from the consultant without diluting the design.
And also, please explain how you preserve technical integrity, meaning the need for drivers, the need for maybe IP65 installations, meaning exterior installations, and then coordinating with controls consultants, like who does the dimming and all.
Yeah. So in the initial stage itself, we make sure the driver locations, where it is kept, what type of driver. We make sure it is you know it's compatible with the automation system. So we and like she was asking about the IP rated. So all our exterior fixture we give with the IP 68 connectors or gel connectors, and make sure they are really, I mean, if they are integrating and installing it properly, we have a team who overlooks the installation as well.
Yeah, and three is the specification integrity. How, like, you don't touch a specification at all. Like, that's very important, because value engineering is a part of every project. We should never deny that. I've never gotten 100% aspect, and it's not possible. We start with something. So I wanted him to just talk a little bit about the value engineering process.
Yeah, I told in the initial time, like we do try and preserve the specs as much as possible, but of course budgets are constrained, and we try to give alternatives which are like the exact equivalents or something. Somewhere there will be a compromise, but we try not to change the whole thing, because if you change the beam angles or anything, the total design perspective will change.
Yeah, so basically I try and ensure that there are 3 grades in my specification. Grade A, I don't let the client touch it at all. I say this should be per specification, because there are never equivalents available in the Indian market. Indian R&D is good right now in the last 2 years, but like for example, to understand which can never be R&D'd and done. And there are grade B specification, which kind of, there are some are allowable to only certain alternates. But grade C are like very, very pedestrian fixtures, like, just strips and so on, like where I give them the entire liberty to, but when you substitute, you only use certain products which we know have at least worked for 2 years in a site. That's something he always ensures.
Yeah. So even for strips, we make sure, there is channels given so that the lines are maintained. There is no, normally in a cove, they don't put aluminum channels and diffusers. So if you do that, there are chances, if you don't use that, there are chances the strips will fail faster. And the uneven sealing, the light output. So we need to take care of all those as well. So we make sure everything is done properly at site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.